Thank you so much, and welcome to the show, Bals. Welcome back, Alor. It's Quickshot and Vedius bringing you the first 3 games today. And a lot of stakes on the line. I think Youngbuck really hammered home how it's very important for XL to consistently pick up wins in the second half of summer. Also to avenge a very one-sided defeat at the hands of Misfits from several weeks ago.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think that for me, this has become a lot more exciting than originally expected, right? When we saw the first half of the split, XL was a team that everyone just assumed was going to be sitting at the bottom of the barrel. Yep. When we looked at like that 6th spot, the 5th, 6th argument that we often have here in Europe, was like Misfits, Vitality, maybe even a Schalke, maybe, at the very beginning of the split. As the season progressed, Misfits had a fantastic run, and it kind of like looked like they were going to surprise everyone, and XL was going to sit at the bottom of the barrel. But with the addition of Mark and Hank, Markoon and Advienne, this roster is just completely different. XL is just completely different. And
they are so fun to watch as well.
They're super fun to watch. And the thing is, what's crazy is when you look at the names of Nukeduck and Patrik, right? Remember that they were on the original Origin roster that made it to the final against G2, right? And so those two have a lot of power in and of themselves, right? But they haven't had the best of splits in recent history. They haven't had the same level of performance. But then you add these 2 young players who are hungry to be aggressive, super proactive on the map. It feels like that working with the experience of these two, you just have like a completely different team on your hands, and this XL roster is now making that race to finally secure that spot in playoffs. I
really like the willingness to play aggressive as well, but it has been a double-edged sword because that aggressiveness has also bitten XL in the behind. Cast your mind back to last week where Patrik played the Draven against Mad Lions. XL threw absolutely everything they could to try get him ahead. I like the mentality. I like the approach. And the same, in my mind, can be said for Misfits. They ultimately lost the game to Astralis last weekend by going for the Nexus kill, trying to push, but it shows a hunger, it shows a desire. All right, we're gonna jump into draft. We are playing on patch 11.14. I wanna see if and what big shakeups could come into play. Tom Kench, will we see him this weekend? Akali, will she be showing up at all? The Boss, definitely not a huge fan, at least from Ready Check. Vedius, what do you anticipate as we move into Misfits on the blue side?
Well, I think that given for XL, this is the first time they're actually going to be back on the stage. Comfort is going to be a big thing for them. I think that Markoon is going to be wanting to get his hands on something that he can have a lot of agency on. He's been playing a lot of Lee Sin. He's played a bit of Volibear, one Diana game as well. Wouldn't be surprised to see Lee somewhere on the ban table even, given that both junglers do like to grab that for themselves. And even after the E nerfs to Lee, while that's pushed him a little bit out of lane presence, I still think here in the jungle, in Europe at least, he's still a very common pick, especially when paired with things like the LeBlanc. Champions like Viego, Gwen, Lucian, Kalista, all still very prevalent on the current patch, all still champions that many players in this game are very keen to get their hands on. So unsurprising to see many of the picks that we mentioned removed on the ban table.
Yeah, all taken off. Gwen will be the last ban from XL. And just before we were going on air, talked a little bit about Nocturne, some of the changes. Stride break in. I want to see whether or not he'll be showing his face. That will be a Thresh lock in here for Vander, who has had a fantastic summer so far.
So assumption would be that paired with that would be Aphelios or Jinx, which then suggests to me that XL would be thinking about a Draven or paired up with the Nautilus, perhaps. Now, we are seeing a hover of the Aphelios, and I wonder if XL is suggesting that they want to take it away, perhaps pair it up with something like the new Tom Kench. They're not going to do that, but they are clearly telling Misfits, we know what you want, and they're just going to take it away from them. So they will actually lock in the Aphelios, they will deny it. I would not mind seeing something like a Jinx here for Misfits if they want to still go for that hyper carry route. It pairs up very nicely with the Thresh. You have a lot of synergy in the 2 versus 2. Gives you good scaling, gives you good range.
It also gives you PTSD when you start thinking back to the Nocturne, Hecarim, Ziggs, Diana. You know,
true.
Absolutely everything jumping on. Whether or not that'll come to fruition for XL will remain to be seen. The Lee Sin is going to be secured here, just like you were talking about, Vedius. And it's not going to be the Jinx, it will be the Varus instead.
Okay.
Looking for probably that poke build to some degree?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when you're playing against an Aphelios, what you want is range. Yeah. And I think that Varus achieves the same thing, just in a very different way. He's less about being that hyper carry, he's more about providing that strong poke into the late game, and he does scale very well. That's something you still have to respect and acknowledge, and it's about, can you actually get on top of him? Remember, he doesn't have the best in terms of mobility, but he also does have his ultimate, which sets up for engages, so it pairs up very nicely with the Thresh, given that if a hook ever lands, you know that something is is going to follow through.
One of the things that's also crucial in my mind with XL's prevalence or desire to get in your face, to pick fights over and over, if Kobbe is able to get into a state where those piercing arrows can chunk down XL, slow them, make them second guess whether they want to dive, it could be a very powerful tactic in holding back the onslaught. We're into phase 2 bans. Camille and Set will immediately be removed from the pool. I want to see what's going to be happening up in the top lane as we need to see this for both Kryze and HiRit.
If I was XL, I'd consider a Zoe ban right now. I think that when they have Varus already locked in, we know Vetheo is also a big Zoe player. It just seems like a pretty safe ban that would both be very effective against Vetheo and would also limit their options in terms of the comp. They're not going to go for it, so this will be something that I'll be keeping my eyes on, a direction that Misfits could go for if they want to keep in the theme of poke. It depends on what sort of direction they're looking for with their mid lane mage, which we have been seeing a lot more recently. Things like the Ziggs, still very relevant, with the Sylas, LeBlanc, Yasuo all being removed, and I'm curious as to what direction Misfits will go if it is not, in fact, the Zoe.
I mean, that Sylas pick, Veteo's played it twice this season. He's got a 21 KDA, won both of those games, one of which was against XL all the way back in week 3. Going to have that Renekton secured and locked in for XL, and now Misfits will decide, are they going to go that poke direction? The Zoe is up. It is something that Vetheo is extremely proficient on. Only one game played this summer was permabanned last spring. Instead, it's going to be the Jayce for now, still leaning in that direction. Yep.
The Jayce into the Renekton, I think, is a pretty solid matchup, and in the hands of HiRit, it also gives you a pretty easy lane to play around in the early game, something that Misfits do love to do. Let's see how they round out their composition with their final pick. Again, I'm leaning towards the Zoe, but of course, they do have a lot of options under their belt, and it will be, as we expected, the Zoe locked in for Vetheo. So he's going to get his hands on comfort. They are going for a very poke-heavy composition with Jayce, Varus, and the Zoe. You have decent disengage tools thanks to the Jayce. You also have the Lee Sin Kick. You also have the Thresh Lantern. So the whole composition is very much around setting it for objectives, using your poke to your advantage, controlling areas of the map, forcing enemy into like walking into your poke, and then sort of picking apart at the XL roster.
And historically, whenever I've seen very, very heavy poke comps, if you do not have the vision, if you don't have the control, you can get run down, but the counter to that is engage.
Yes.
And when I look at XL, Twisted Fate being able to disrupt, I think there is some potential, but it's not the hardest of engage options.
I think that Diana acts as a very powerful engage in the current meta. Her ability to flash E into ult, it is very long, very fast as well, and it can be difficult to react to if you don't have the stopwatch or your flash available. So the problem is the only real follow-up is the Nautilus. You could argue that if you have the Gravitum with the Aphelios, you could set something up, maybe a Twisted Fate flank. But in terms of well, I think I was going to say in terms of ease of execution, I was a little bit more on the side of Misfits, but the reality is poke comps are hard to play.
Yes.
Because they require patience, they require good setup, they require clean execution, whereas XL have got a little bit more of a, well, let's just fight whenever we can sort of comp, and they do have that hyper carry in the form of the Aphelios in the late game as well. It's going to be a good one. We're jumping into our first game of the day. It's XL versus Misfits.
And welcome to the Rift. And that little like self-debate you just had in your head, Vedius, around like ease of execution and approach, I have exactly the same thing, because whenever you see kind of a poke comp versus a comp that can engage, in my mind and in my memory, the team that gets ahead can control the entire game.
Yes, so I think it's important before we even get to those team fights. Like on paper, in theory, my assumption would be XL just have a stronger 5v5 than that of Misfits, just because a lot of Misfits damage comes from like Varus Q, Zoe Q, and Jayce Q. And admittedly, Jayce does scale well and can do a lot of damage in late game fights, but when I contrast that to an Aphelios in the front line of a Renekton, I just think that XL have a much easier time when it comes to just a straight up 5v5. But games aren't always that simple. It's not always a matter of XL will get the perfect 5v5s that they want, and they haven't actually been the best at getting 5v5s. We heard Youngbuck talking about how they've been working a lot on their team fighting coming into this week because they want to get better at it. Their setups are good, so it's something we'll definitely be keeping track of, but in the early game, priority is ultimately what matters matters. And Misfits have prio in the top lane, they have prio in mid, and I think that you could argue that they can get it in bot, but I'm not sure if they actually will, because my expectations are that Misfits will look to primarily play around the top side of the map early, but when I actually look at the junglers, Markoon is starting top side alongside Razork.
Let's take a look at Razork and Markoon very quickly, some of the stats, and a little tidbit for you. Razork, currently the First Blood King here in Summer, all 8 First Bloods that Misfits have secured, he's been involved in. And we see the early game impact for both of these junglers, first and second for K+A, kill participation. And just as you were talking about very early on, how Razork can play around that top lane, and we'll see whether or not he's going to have the option to do so.
Yeah, and the caveat we have to add is that Markoon obviously only has 4 games.
Correct.
So his stats are a little inflated because there is a slightly slower sample size, but the thing is that he's made a very big impression very early on in his career, and it's exciting to see where he can go and why this matchup is so exciting. Now, Markoon is doing a path that he actually did last week when playing against Fnatic, where he started on the Raptors, went towards his blue, and his goal is to actually do a full clear, and it's debatable whether or not he actually wants to contest through these scuttles, because when you look at the lanes, observers are highlighting bot lane right now. You can see that Kobbe and Vander have the push. In mid lane, you can see that the Zoe also has the push, and is able to get the ward down onto the Raptors, so they're going to know that that is cleared out. And then in the top lane, if we have a quick look at the Renekton, you can also see that Misfits have the push. So they have 3 pushing lanes, which means that as a jungler, you're like, yeah, as a jungler, if you're Razork, you're like, my life is easy, I can do whatever I want. If you're Markoon, you're like, this sucks. I can't do anything. I'm not even going to bother contesting Scuttle Crabs. And so that's why he's taking this path. Raptors into blue, into Gromp, into Wolves. He will get spotted out here. But he's likely just going to go into his red, into the top side clear, and then as a result of this, his Raptors will respawn in time after clearing that, so that he can then just get back to clearing, and he doesn't have to contest a Scuttle Crab. He may still very well be able to get one. He was able to against Fnatic last week, but I think his whole game plan in the early game is assuming he's not going to get one, because he just doesn't have prio anywhere on the map.
Of course, how much of an advantage can Misfits accrue? These waves are starting to crash under the tower. We saw Patrik and Advienne being chunked out by Hail of Arrows, the piercing arrow as well by Kobbe and Vander. Up in the top lane, Veteo's left the lane once again. So that typical chicken camp ward that we see from mid lane is Razork's going to get onto the top scuttle while Markoon is clearing out. And Nukeduck, the only one that's staying relatively even here on CS. Kobbe and Vander get caught out. It's hook for hook trade. Patrik continues to step forward. Only 4 CS down right now. And we're pushing a little bit away from him. And of course, the first move there will be Razork making his way towards the mid lane, but the wave is pushed back and Nukeduck already backing away. So pushing lanes as expected and anticipated, and the Scuttle Crab will be started off here. Look, Razork isn't going to have backup from the bottom lane.
So early game jungling kind of going as we very much expected. Razork is going to secure himself both Scuttle Crabs, but also have a look at Markoon. Immediately going to come back onto the mat. His Raptors are back up and alive, so he's actually keeping pace with Razork in the jungle. He might be a little bit behind in XP, but ultimately he is still doing very well, and this is kind of what you have to do on Diana, especially when you don't have the same early power in terms of trading or being able to fight in the very early game. It's a good hook lands there from Advienne.
Yeah, the death sentence comes out. Kobbe forced to use the heal. Patrik continues to chase forward, and that's a defensive flash from Advienne. The teleport's coming down. That is Vetheo arriving. Piercing arrow will chunk down the Nautilus, but Veteo's used the TP, and if you look at the minimap, Markoon's making his way down, as well as Nukeduck available. I don't think a further skirmish will play out.
This is great vision coming out from Misfits. They've dropped wards early on around the Raptor pit to see what Markoon's pathing was up to, and now they've got this ward on the Gromp. So Razork should have full information on what Markoon is up to in the early game, and he should be able to path to accommodate. But this means that a player like HiRit right now, look at what he's doing. Hyper aggressive, playing underneath the tower because he knows exactly where the enemy jungler is, and he's trying to leverage the range advantage that he has in this 1 versus 1. So Misfits utilizing their early pressure well. They've been able to gain small advantages, but props to Nukeduck and the XL bot lane, because they have maintained, well, Patrik even has a lead in the 2 versus 2 in the bot lane. And again, we kind of go back to what we were talking about in draft, where you look at Nukeduck and Patrik, these names on paper, they have here in Europe historically been very talented individuals.
Yeah, they really have. And of course, Advienne landing a number of dredge lines have really turned the tide of that bottom lane. Veteo's going to use that stolen flash away to get out of range of some damage, and Advienne and Markoon could look to make a play. Not going to chase just yet. That's engaged. Sonic Wave, resonating strike. Razork not going to find the final hit. 9 for 9. First Blood King in Summer, instantly traded back by the destiny of Nukeduck.
Good ultimate there from Nukeduck, but an even better pick for Razork. This is going to be so good for HiRit in the 1 versus 1. And that potential collapse that was happening in the mid lane now going to be thwarted because Nukeduck was forced to answer top lane. Putting this Renekton behind is great for Misfits because it removes one of the big front lines that XL do have in their comp that they're using looking to utilize in the team fights later on.
All right, Nukeduck was able to get the counter though. Used that ultimate. Here was the setup as we were watching the mid lane. Just, I mean, it's all the pressure that's been applied to Kryze.
Exactly. It's just a great communication thing here. HiRit is basically saying, hey, Kryze can't play the game. He's level 5. This is a great time to dive in because he's going to want to TP back in and catch this wave. And then Razork was able to interrupt that. And again, it all comes back to the information. I want to draw your attention once again to the minimap. You'll notice that there's another ward on the Raptors. And this is something that Misfits have consistently done in the early game, constantly keeping track of where Markoon is so that Razork can make informed decisions and play around that. So that top lane play couldn't really be countered by Markoon, but Nukeduck with the Destiny was able to get an answer.
I'm going to go back to something you said during the draft as well, that Markoon's engage power as he is reaching close to level 6. Kind of one of the danger men that Misfits need to be afraid of. If they can keep him at arm's length, keep him away, it will help out. Here it's going to jump into the minion wave, puts a lot of damage onto Kryze, who I think started that fight off. Here it will fall back, got the CS advantage, and Markoon doesn't have access to the ultimate just yet, could fancy something under the tower. Flash is available for HiRit as well, and Kryze has still got the Dominus. Here it's going to back away, and I think he's respecting it for now.
Kryze has ultimate, Nukeduck does not, but Nukeduck has TP. Meanwhile, the cross map is happening for Misfits in the bot lane. Notice, 4 members looking to collapse onto the tower. XL have to make this work, otherwise Misfits are going to get really far ahead.
Markoon and Kryze stepping forward, the bottom lane for XL's backed out. HiRit's already used the hammer to try get away. The tower's helping for now. Defensive flash, uses the hammer to the minions. Markoon takes a couple tower shots. That's the second kill for XL. And on the bottom lane, it absolutely fizzles for Misfits.
Much needed play here for XL. They were losing a little bit of control in the early game, and Kryze was only going to continue to be put further and further behind. But Markoon found a window where he could look to punish HiRit. A good trade from Kryze earlier on in the lane allowed him to come back, and now he's even ahead in gold. And props again to Patrik and Advienne being able to avoid that bot lane dive. Markoon will lose his blue, and he won't be able to counter jungle it. Smart by him, because he realizes that there would have been plenty enough time for Razork to be able to answer back. And with HiRit having the TP, Markoon knows that it's better to reset here rather than try and steal away any of these camps.
Man, what a tense start at 8 minutes in. Gold is dead even, 2 kills to 1. Razork will get support here from Kobbe and Vander, who've already swapped to head to the top lane, and doesn't look like XL will be able to contest the Rift Herald. While that's going on, Patrik's going to make his way down bottom lane, so we're going to have this lane swap, and Kryze will be facing off against the duo for now.
And so what I will say is, like, this debate around how good is Europe has been coming up a lot, right? And one of the things that I think G2 has notably said is that a lot of the teams are better in Europe. And I think this game is a really great example to showcase why our middle-of-the-pack teams are so much better than what they used to be. The way in which the teams are using pressure, the fact that Misfits have 3 pushing lanes, the way in which they're using that pressure, and then Markoon and XL are playing around it. They're respecting it. Places where they have to concede, they are conceding. That doesn't mean that Markoon's just doing nothing. He's not just giving up and dying. He's actually looking for cross maps because Razork can't be everywhere. And so he's looking for those windows to fight back, and they're keeping the gold even, and Misfits have a slight lead, as you'd come to expect, and now they're investing towards top side. They've made the swap up top. They're going to go for this early Herald. And again, this is all within what you expect from Misfits, because they have the prio, they're getting these early objectives, they're going to get the early towers. The question now becomes, as we transition from early into mid-game, is how does Misfits use this early lead that they've been able to build, and can they snowball off it? Because again, you're always thinking XL's team fighting is the strength of their composition. If they can come into these team fights on an even footing, then that's where Misfits could be put into an awkward situation. But as long as they maintain the lead with a poke comp, then they're chilling.
It is the case. I'm going to keep watching Markoon and Kryze as well, as that play really helping get Kryze back into the game. I think stopping this tower falling is also going to be very beneficial here for Misfits. And then we have to evaluate the vision, the setup here. Whenever you play that Pokemon, you cannot afford to be surprised. You cannot afford to get flanked. And similarly, as we now move into the skirmishes, I'm going to keep a close eye on some of those stopwatches. Talking a lot about the impact they've had, how many fights have really determined winning or losing games in recent weeks. And for Misfits, they're now going to start off the Dragon here. So they got the first tower. There is a number of XL members inside the jungle, but I don't think they will contest. And Misfits will pick up the next neutral objective as well.
And I think it's smart for XL. They know that their comp is not really that strong right now. Diana wants an item completed. Nukeduck wants an item completed. Patrik wants an item completed. Like, these champions are very item dependent as the flash comes in.
Well, there was the flash engage we're talking a little bit about. The Moonlight Vigil is still available. A lot of damage goes forward as the death sentence will go wide. Lantern flash from Vander gets him to safety and costs Kryze his TP.
Also cost Patrik his flash. I like the proactivity here from XL. It will allow them to secure this tower, that's for certain. But Misfits is able to get away with their lives. Let's have a look elsewhere on the map. Vander's overstaying a little bit here, I think. Here comes the dive.
Teleport is available from HiRit. Look at the mini-map. Razork and Vetheo making their way down the flay into the box, and Death Sentence will hold at least Markoon in place. Now Razork looking for the executions. The tower will fall. Veteo's coming in. There's the teleport from HiRit as well. This is a 3 versus 4. The burst damage needs to connect. Not enough just yet as Advienne flashes to safety before the hammer comes down. 1-2 quick kills for HiRit. Countered back by Patrik, who remains relatively healthy. Vetheo needs time to get the cooldowns available as Nukeduck flashes away the Sonic Wave. That was a Jayce shot instead. Now Vetheo and Kobbe continue to push forward, waiting for the Sleepy Trouble Bubble. Piercing arrow, that's going to get one. Vetheo looks for another, and Patrik cleanses and continues to walk away. And it's going to be a very big trade in the bottom lane. Ends up 3 for 1.
Very big skirmish, and it looks like the Misfits end up coming out on top, and they want to try and get a little bit more. Big brain Vander there. It looked like that he was overstaying, but I think that he was getting XL to overcommit. He was saying, ooh, look, I'm a tasty little Thresh. I bet you want to get the gold that's sitting in my back pocket, but in order to do that, you have to invest a lot. And what happens when you commit those ultimates to the play? You don't have them when the follow-up TP comes from Misfits. So I'd like to think that that was the play, that was the big brain play that came out. Because it definitely paid off for Misfits.
It really did. They get themselves 2 kills, 2 assists on HiRit's Jayce, and this is the setup. Look at the mini-map for the plays coming in.
Yeah, so you can see the rotation is already coming through, and Vander is saying, I'm going to try and keep them here for as long as I can. Kryze's ultimate is used, Advienne's ultimate is used, and then as the collapse is coming, Twisted Fate is saying, hey, I'm going to reset and TP in. Great kick initially from Razork. The ultimate then comes through from Nukeduck, and initially ends up being a 1-for-1, but then you can see how XL is just kind of trapped in between 3 members, and the poke is coming through from Misfits as XL has tried to disengage from the situation, and this is where the poke is so powerful. The chase down from Misfits comp is so difficult to avoid, and there's very little that XL can do to get out of that situation.
So much damage. That shock blast from HiRit, really having a very large impact. Look at that, 2,100 damage throughout the course of the fight. Razork's not done yet. Flash is still available. Kobbe's going to continue to step out. Kryze jumping forward. Here comes Razork. That's already a dead Kobbe. Vander uses the first stopwatch. If the Dragon Range kicks will buy some time. Markoon gets caught by the death sentence. Vetheo is making his way down the river, but it's too little. It's too late. It's Markoon and Kryze that have got themselves 2 kills already. Now Veteo's arrived. He's got himself a stolen Ghost Blade as well. And the minions will help shield that barrage of skill shots.
And immediately XL answer back, and this is where we have to give a lot of credit to the addition of Markoon, a player that is not afraid to fight, a player that is not afraid to get down and dirty and scrap when the enemy looks like they have control. A huge double kill for him is really going to accelerate this Diana in this game. Already level 9. And XL suddenly swing the gold lead back in their favor.
I mean, they got 1,000 advantage. Proto Belt already, in the back pocket there for Markoon. While he did commit the flash in the previous play, you can see exactly how XL want to jump onto their targets. He's going to steal that flash away to safety, and the tower will fall. So they're still even at the towers, 2 apiece. It is still very close on gold now that those towers have been equalized, and with a minute 20 until the next dragon, you start taking a look at how the vision is set up and whether or not these teams want to fight for it.
Having a look at some of the items that are coming through. Big stopwatch being completed for Markoon, working towards that Zhonya's Hourglass. Will, of course, be helpful. He'll probably want to sit on that, try and use it, and then upgrade it to the Zhonya's. Suggests to me that XL could very well look for a fight right now, especially with the small item advantage they have over Vetheo. The Drake is spawning in about a minute's time. And, we talked about the items. XL, given that they currently lead in gold, Patrik getting some levels under his belt, Kryze with the Gore Drinker acts as a pretty effective front line now. This is where XL's like, okay, we probably feel a little bit more confident in our ability to fight, but objective setups are really important. So the thing about poke comps is that when you control a Fog of War, every time you try to face check into them, Zoe Bubble, Varus Ultimate, Thresh Hook, there are all these things that you don't want to face check into. And that's why XL have to make sure that they contest this early vision. They want to try and get themselves this early Scuttle Crab, which is exactly what they're doing, and I like this from XL. But the great thing about Misfits comp is, even if they don't have control of the objective, they can use their poke to force their way in, because you only need one Shock Blast like that to suddenly force XL members away, and then they can start regaining that control.
Yeah, Patrik needed to back out as soon as that Shock Blast connected from HiRit. Now Misfits inside the river, but the Scuttle Crab is there and planted. Sonic Wave this time around from Razork won't find the target, and Sleepy Trouble Bubble going fishing.
Look at how hard
just
it is.
Looking for a target, but the observers have done such a great job highlighting the danger that is present for XL. They don't know where those skill shots are coming from.
But they have a rough idea. Misfits is confined to this single area right now. And let's see how things play out. Flash hook.
That's the flash hook. Dredgeline will miss. The death sentence will not. Advienne's the first one to use a stopwatch, and underneath the dragon, it's secured by Markoon at the cost of Advienne's life. Razork continues to chase. The kick backwards into the Sonic Wave, concluded by Kobbe, and now Misfits continue pushing into the XL jungle. They manage to force XL into the pit, get the kills, and they're going to get the tower.
Okay, so while Misfits do lose the Drake, they do get a lot off the back of it. They get themselves 2 kills. They're likely going to get themselves this mid-tier 1 as well, and more control over the map is going to be gained. I like the way that Misfits played that. A big punish onto Advienne, who really committed to finding that engage, and then Razork with the great individual play to catch out Markoon, who had no flash, to make sure that the kills were equalized. Misfits now with the gold lead.
I mean, it's just a swing. 6 kills apiece, a dragon apiece. Yes, there's 1,000 gold difference. And it is just balancing on a knife's edge. And like many games in the last few weeks, Vedius, it feels like we'll be setting up for some fights around objectives. Both teams are willing to commit, and both teams using their compositions well. Kryze has support here from Advienne. Nukeduck doesn't have Destiny available. This will put some pressure on the Misfits duo to at least make their way to the middle lane and clear out these waves.
Advienne in some serious trouble right now.
Ooh.
Will be able to get out though. Uses the dredge line to take himself to safety. So, wow, 17.5 minutes in. The game is basically dead even. Misfits have a little bit more control over the map. They weren't quite able to take that mid-tier 1. They do have some vision invested bot side, and XL's now moving out into the side lanes a little bit more. So like, as we approach more into the mid game, we're going to start seeing more of a contest around these neutral objectives, as you very much expect. And this is where it comes back to our conversation about what do the comps want to do. Well, Misfits, they want to leverage their poke, they want to chunk XL out, and they ideally want to create a health advantage or even just find a pick before a fight even starts. Whereas XL, they're looking to find a flank, they're looking to find a good engage, and they're basically trying to find this wombo combo of Aphelios, Renekton, Diana, where they can try and melt this poke before it even has an opportunity to do any damage. But in order to do that, XL have to play with confidence, because you can't afford to hesitate against a poke comp, because the second that you do, the poke and the damage is going to come through, and by the time you then go for that engage, the health disparity is too big and you end up falling.
And then HiRit on Jayce can just clean up with that Mercurial Hammer. I mean, we saw Patrik taking a piercing arrow to the face, forces him away from the lane. Misfits just continuing siege up here. If you look down south though, XL do have the potential to engage. Vander's waiting back, wants to use that lantern to bring whoever is under threat to safety. Now, Nukeduck making his way from the top lane, and HiRit will join. The tower stands for now, but we are setting up for a potential fight just around this tower. Misfits are really committing to this objective.
Well, Razork has the Herald, and he's decided that he just doesn't want to use it to secure this tower because he feels like he doesn't need it. But I feel like that they're in a position where they could drop it and then walk the wave into the next tier 2 tower and actually get a lot of damage down or even secure it. Right now, I think that Misfits is just kind of wasting a lot of time. Because while all this is happening, look at Nukeduck. He's been sitting in a side lane, farming it. Could we actually have a look at the gold and see how he's doing? Because even though he's behind in CS, yeah, he actually has a slight gold advantage because of the Twisted Fate passive coming in clutch there for him. So, XL, I think, is in a good position. Diana is continuing to farm up, level 11 right now. Kryze very much behind HiRit in the 1 versus 1. He probably won't be able to handle HiRit, but again, his whole purpose is trying to beat that front line, and all XL is waiting for is this Drake. So I do think the Misfits missed a bit of a window there, not to try and push with the Herald, but perhaps that's exactly what Misfits is waiting for. The next Drake to spawn, that they're going to drop the Herald to create this point of pressure, and then they'll use that to try and split XL up so they can then secure themselves the next Drake.
A minute and 10 seconds until that is up. I want to take a look at the vision, because that was really ultimately what decided the previous engage. So Misfits are able to play around that one. And secondly, can XL find their engage? I'm going to take a brief moment just to quickly highlight the experience difference between the supports, because in the Lost Dragon fight, Vander and Advienne trading those hooks, and ultimately Vander having higher accuracy on that one in the lantern. But look at that experience difference. And not only that, this is Advienne's first game on the LEC stage.
It is just veteran versus rookie. It is literally that. We have a lot of veterans here in Europe, and we also have a lot of rookies, and very rarely do we get to see this kind of level of contrast where Advienne is coming in with a big splash. You saw him flashing in, trying to be that big playmaker, whereas Vander is more of a voice, more of the voice of reason for his team, and perhaps that patience comes with age.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean...
I can confirm that.
Advienne is very keen to look for fights. Speaking of fights, Markoon looking for one. Ooh, messes up the combo there. Did drop the ultimate.
Not going to be able to use that for the follow-up. 10 seconds to Drake. Vander stepping forward. Gold card One's going to connect onto HiRit. He's backed away for now, and Razork holds on to the Q. Veteo's waiting in the wings. Keep your eyes on the Sleepy Trouble bubble. Advienne has flash available to him. That's a gigantic accelerated shock blast.
But look at mid. Exactly as we were talking about. They've been holding the Herald so they can use it as a point of pressure. Force XL to split up, and you can now see that XL is divided. Without the ultimate available on Markoon, with the fact that this Herald is pushing down mid, Misfits get a completely uncontested Drake, and now they can continue to keep the pressure up as they walk away with the objective.
I mean, we're in for a little bit of a ride here. Obviously, Misfits, they need to play this calculated, right? They need to make sure they have the information, the vision to work with. Obviously, Markoon ideally wants to land the combo and the engage tools onto his targets. But it was a bit of an opportunistic attempt onto HiRit inside the river, and it cost the Dragon. I don't think it's the biggest problem right now, but it's a 2,000 gold lead. And XL, they have to find and engage, make it work to make sure this Pokemon doesn't keep them being shot like fish in a barrel under every single tower.
So Baron is where I think Pokecoms can be really scary, because we already talked about wanting to enter Fog of War, but you kind of think about how these wars can be so impactful for champions like Zoe, Thresh, Razork. He has his eyes on Nukeduck.
Oh, this is bold. Veteo's coming in as a teleport being channeled, and Razork will be fed to the wolves here.
That's a Baron.
To use the ultimate as well. Now, without Razork, the main components of Poke are still around. Can HiRit, Vetheo, and Kobbe make this work inside the pits?
That was such a massive mistake from Razork. Like, that is going to cost his team so much. They needed to play with patience, and now more are getting picked off.
The dredge line will catch on to Vander. He's now down. The chain of corruption spreads across multiple members of XL. Paddle Star as well as the portal jump. Advienne loses 50%, loses another 30. Baron will help out HiRit, getting a kill. And as long as the poke is up, you are a fish in a barrel. Also, Misfits get the tower, but that was a costly mistake, or could have been.
Yeah, that really could have been. Razork needs to really apologize for that play, because I mean, hopefully we'll get a replay and we can see where everyone else is on the map, and that's exactly what we're gonna get. Thank you, observers. So you can see the Zoe can't really follow up from this position, and Razork just doesn't respect an area of the map that he has no control of. The river is not his, so trying to make that play is way too overzealous, and he gets punished for it. Then the Thresh comes through, trying to get a little bit of vision back, but then Kryze is controlling well, and they're just trying to create space, and XL find themselves another pick. But this is where the poke comes through. Really good ultimate from Kobbe into a good Q. The Baron is still holding on to Patrik, so he's forced to disengage. And XL then want to re-engage, but as they're disengaging, Misfits just continue to chunk them out, so they get a pick onto Advienne, and that stops XL from committing to the Baron.
The power and the impact of that chain of corruption is really dramatic. And when you see that, Misfits were 3 screens away throughout the majority of that Baron play, it really shows you the impact they can have when they are in control. But XL, they've got the kill lead. It's 2 minutes until the next Dragon. 4 towers have been picked up for Misfits. And I'm looking down the list. Hourglass completed for Markoon. Where else are there stopwatches to continue tracking? Veteo's got one for himself. And those are going to be very, very powerful tools if Markoon and Kryze are unable to find the kill. And then Misfits can do the counters.
Observers, if you could very much please show us what XL can see right now. What exactly are they playing with? They have very little information. Oh, but the ultimate from Nukeduck is going to come out at the worst time. Because what I want to highlight is how little XL can see. That's likely why XL was forced to use the Twisted Fate ultimate there to highlight how they have very little control over this topside river, and it makes XL very uncomfortable. Admittedly, Misfits don't have the fastest Baron, but XL, they're just losing more and more control. And Nukeduck is forced to use his ultimate to at least gain some of that control back, clear out some of these vision, so that picks from Misfits are less likely to come through.
I mean, HiRit has got the teleport available while Kryze and Nukeduck's on cooldown. It will be coming up just in a moment. And the stakes are very high.
Yes.
You know, these teams are playing very, very well. Misfits 7-4, XL 4-7. We heard Youngbuck talking about the importance of picking up wins against like the top 5 teams, sneaking that away in the race for playoffs.
And I think it's really important to mention that typically 9 wins is enough to qualify you for playoffs. Typically. There are some exceptions to that in Europe's history. Yes. 10 wins is basically you're locked in for playoffs, but 9 wins is usually enough to get you in. And so when you think about that, XL is very far away. They are 5 wins away. And when you look at who they're playing up against next, the next few games are teams that they have to beat. SK, they need to win that. Schalke, they need to win that. Vitality, a direct competitor for that spot. These are all much needed wins. And then you then look at Rogue, and you're like, well, okay, Okay, Rogue is a different beast, so if you're looking to get more of these wins, then this game is extremely important to you. And on the other side, it's a very similar position for Misfits, a team that in their second half always falls short. A win here would mean a lot for them because it puts them so much closer to securing that playoff spot.
And also, if Misfits do have this inevitable shoe drop, as Ifya put it earlier today, and start to drop some games, having 2-0s against teams that could be around you is so important. Having wins in the second half of Summer is so important. And Misfits, they are not trying to push this vision forwards. Observers have highlighted very elegantly what Excel are working with. But look, Piercing Arrow, Shock Blast, Markoon's got Flash available to him. He's looking for a flank while that's going on. Vetheo's in the mid lane, pushing. Markoon's going to proto belt in, gets flayed backwards. The Moonfall will catch 3. HiRit is going to go down in just a moment. Managed to stay alive just long enough. Now all of a sudden, Kobbe's the last man standing as Vetheo will join the fray. Paddle Star as well. Sleepy Trouble Bubble won't do as much as they wanted. Patrik's skill Flash and Cleanse. Misfits on the wrong side of the rift. That's a dash forward, and the gold card will travel. XL now peeling north. They get 1 in exchange for their jungler.
I really like the engage from Markoon, but the follow-up just could not come through from the rest of XL. Now Misfits get to re-engage with all their poke, and look, they have control over the mid lane, and they are just dictating the pace of this game. Misfits doing everything they can to find a good engage, but they just can't do it, and that means that Misfits continues to play Ring Around the Rosy.
Is the initiation tools not enough? I want to explore that thought, because XL have tried a couple times.
Ooh, Misfits
the recalls, Paddle Star, Death Sentence, Sleepy Trouble Bubble. Patrik and Nukeduck left alone. Here it's got the TP available to him, but this will just secure a safe third dragon for Misfits. And I'm going to re-ask the question. Is there enough initiation, firstly? And secondly, could XL be doing it cleaner?
Well, I think Misfits' vision setup is really good. They're respecting the engage from XL, but look at how difficult it is to follow this up. The kick comes through from Razork as well. And basically, like, yes, they get that initial kill onto HiRit, but Misfits are just able to immediately disengage. They have the Varus ultimate, they have the speed up from the Jayce, they have the kick, everything. There's so many ways to stop XL from actually diving on, so that even if they do get a good engage, the ability for Misfits to suddenly say, no, you will not follow up on this, is far too strong. So we're seeing how difficult it is for XL to actually execute this, because even though on paper you think, oh, teamfight, easy to execute, in reality you're seeing how much harder it actually is when playing into this card.
And of course, keep your eyes on the flashes. In that previous engage there, HiRit, Kobbe, Vander, all losing these, and Kobbe's flash was instrumental getting him away from the XL members, allowing him to put down damage with those piercing arrows. Third item starting to be completed here across the board. Serpent's Fan picked up by HiRit. I love this into the Nautilus and the Diana. And Misfits are going to start the gambit around Baron. Push the vision a little bit. It's 3.5 until Soul, and XL playing in the darkness. Observer's doing a great job of highlighting it.
Oh. I thought he was going to make more of a play there. No, he was just using it for vision, giving his teammates information on what Misfits was up to. They are posturing around this Baron, and they are continuing to look for picks. They're now going to start this one off.
Patrik has got that Infinity Edge to complement the Collector, as well as Shield Bow. Teleport now coming in from Nukeduck. So it's going to be towards the red buff. Misfits will peel away. So they get the TP, that's already a win. Yep. Can they get more as XL are kind of split inside their own jungle?
I really like the way in which Misfits is utilizing their vision to play this poke comp. Again, poke comps are inherently very difficult because if you overcommit to a fight, your composition is not designed to win 5v5s. You're supposed to be patient. You're supposed to leverage your extremely long range to make it very difficult for XL to ever really fight on you. And the vision that they're setting up, the patience that they're showcasing, the respect that they're showing to XL's engage is very good and well executed. So huge props to Misfits, a team that's still many doubts moving into the second half of this play.
We're 30 minutes into this game, and it is still very, very close. It has been Misfits' favored, right? It has been...
They've been in control.
Misfits in control. They're dictating really what is happening and when things are allowed to happen. But you can still feel the opportunity and the possibilities there for XL. I mean, third item as well. Nukeduck's now got that rapid fire cannon, a little bit extra long range on that gold card. And it's only been a 2,200 gold lead, relatively speaking, not a huge amount. We've got a brief moment. I want to highlight the next couple of games for Misfits. Schalke, Vitality, G2, Fnatic. Misfits similarly want to be picking up wins against Schalke and Vitality, make sure they have further distance from that 5th, 6th spot, maybe 4th, 5th, 6th, depending on how many wins they pick up. Also see whether or not they can maybe silence the naysayers a little, step up a bit against G2 and Fnatic, because there's a lot of people just expecting Misfits to fall off at some point.
I mean, the expectations from a lot of the people that I've spoken to, many pros sit there and think that Misfits still sit outside the top 4. Regardless of what their standings are, like listening to Upset on the podcast on Euphoria, he was talking very much about how it does feel like it is Fnatic, Mad, Rogue, G2 even sitting in that top 4 still. And so I think that Misfits are trying very hard to prove that they are in the conversation for top 4. They can be. And I think that so far they're showing a very well-executed game. A couple of mistakes here and there. We did see that big blunder from Razork, but fortunately for him, it wasn't punished too harshly. And now they're set up around the Baron. They're denying a lot of vision. There is that one ward, as our observers are highlighting here, so that Kryze can actually TP in. He's just gone back to base. Nukeduck is pushing things out. That Baron is dying relatively quickly. Where's the TP flank coming in? Here it is.
All right, there's the hop over the wall from Advienne. Kryze got the GA available to him. Nukeduck's going to land the gold card. Cleanse is already used. Kobbe's in so much trouble. He's already down. Now Misfits are split. They need to get distance and space, but they can't. XL have found them. They jump on. Razork hops over the wall. He's going to use the blast cone to safety. 2 quick kills to XL, and this could be the Baron.
And just like that, XL flipped the game on its head. They find themselves a huge fight, and they're looking to secure themselves the Baron, but Misfits haven't given up just yet.
Yeah, Sentence and Dredgeline hook City aplenty. Patrik gets himself another kill. XL Pearl peel back to the Baron. Vetheo still alive, trying to find some battle stars, but it's simply not enough. The Baron is going to be picked up. XL just flipped the game on its head as we were talking about control. Razork gets himself one. Vetheo is going to be here to help. Battlestar will not be for just yet, trying to trade. Markoon going to hold on to the engage. So just the loss of Advienne. Vetheo is still dancing with his life for now.
So Misfits are just wasting time because the dragon spawns in 10 seconds, which means that XL won't have the opportunity to reset, get back out, and actually contest this Drake.
Okay, Soul versus Baron, what do you like more? Assuming Misfits can pick this up.
Personally, I think that the Soul is not that useful on Misfits. When you think about how many ultimates they actually have, it's not that many, but it opens up the Elder. And with the Elder open, Misfits suddenly get themselves another win condition, because Poke plus Elder is devastating to deal with. But in the same vein, it gives XL another opportunity to find a big fight, with which they can come out on top. I'm not sure if we're even going to get another chance to look back at that last fight, because both teams are posturing around the mid lane.
And now XL willing to push, XL willing to press the advantage. They know they've got those Baron empowered minions. They got the gold lead for the first time in what feels like 20 minutes. And they need to buy some time. It is against the Soul in 5 minutes until Elder. XL continue to step forward. Teleport is up for HiRit, as is Vetheo, both of whom are making their way to the top and bottom lane. And the third tower here will fall for Misfits as XL push it in with Baron.
So I like what XL's doing here, playing through 2 lanes, keeping the Twisted Fate in a side lane, and just having him push waves as the rest of XL use their numbers in mids to gain control and then move into the enemy jungle. And now the vision game is being flipped on its head. Misfits are the ones being denied control. Misfits are the ones having to play against the fog, and XL are trying to use that to as much as their advantage as they can, because now you're kind of at a point in the game where the scaling really comes into fruition. You know, Aphelios, Diana, Twisted Fate is going to be able to one-shot those squishies as well, especially with that rapid-fire cannon and gold cards. Things are going to get a lot harder unless Misfits can find that poke, and a hook lands.
Dredge line from Advienne. The box is used. No one from Misfits just yet. Chain of Corruption comes out, and that is the kill. Now on the counter push, Misfits looking for XL. Markoon gets chunked out so low. The power of poke. Kryze drops down. Dominus, another tag onto Patrik. Razork's got the kick, got the flash, looking for one. Gets pulled backwards. That's at least the hourglass from Markoon. Sonic Wave and a resonating strike. Razork buys some time with the stopwatch. Here it's here to save the day. The GA is procced, as now Nukeduck and Patrik should be able to complete their recalls. Death time is off very, very high, and Misfits are going to push down mid lane.
We have to say it, Advienne has made quite a few mistakes this game. A couple he couldn't really do much about, but a couple of plays that he has tried to make have very quickly been punished, and that was one of them. The moment he dropped, Misfits saw an opportunity to use their long range to chase down XL, find a number of kills, a number of picks, with which they're going to convert into an inhibitor. Misfits still not out of this game yet.
They are absolutely not. 3.5 minutes until the Elder. There is still a gold deficit for Misfits, but super minions in the mid lane for a poke composition is going to be fantastic. So useful for controlling the flow of the game. But XL, they are in with the shot. If you assume the Misfits are going to try prioritize that Elder, that could be the last fight. And it was this hook-on-hook action that ultimately started the downfall.
Yes, and so Advienne looked like he was going to go for a pick, but the problem is the hook came out second from Vander, which meant that he actually rooted up Advienne for way longer, and then the chain CC comes through from Misfits, and then you get to see the chase down power of this poke comp. Varus Q, Lee Sin Q, the bubble from Vetheo, the poke coming out from HiRit. It's just devastating, and the moment XL split apart, that is where Misfits look to collapse.
I mean, that Chain of Corruption is down to a 36-second cooldown. Pretty much every fight from here on out, it's going to be something that Kobbe can use to his advantage. I need to take a quick check when we come out of this replay. Flash, as well as heal, is available for Kobbe, as well as pretty much everyone except Vander on the Misfits side, and that could be very important for this next objective fight.
Yeah, so we didn't get to look back at exactly what happened in the Baron fight. All I remember is that Misfits ended up getting split up. Even though Kobbe had his summoner spells, he still ended up falling to the likes of Markoon and Nukeduck collapsing on top of him. And I think that's one of the scary things you have to be careful of. The moment you split up, Twisted Fate's ultimate is suddenly like, hello, I'm here. I now have a Diana with me, and I have upgraded to a fully classed wizard. I'm basically Gandalf. So Nukeduck is someone you have to be very respectful of. And again, it's all about positioning. And this is why we talked about at the very beginning of this game, ease of execution. Because, yeah, it looks really hard for XL to start a fight. And it does, right? But a lot of that comes from good vision control, good patience from Misfits. The moment you make one mistake with a poke comp, you feel like everything starts to crumble apart, and all that control that you originally had suddenly feels like it disappears.
The margin for error is very, very slim.
Yes.
With the tools that Misfits have.
And so Misfits was looking very good, and they did get themselves an inhibitor, and they're not out of this game yet, but mistakes can be very, very crucial.
You see, that was, of course, Patrik and Advienne sitting in the bush, waiting to go fishing, waiting to look for the play. Looking with a minute and a half to Elder, the willingness or the boldness or the bravery, I'm not sure what word I want to use, to try go for that pick. It didn't start another fight. Vedius, I want to take a look towards the vision as we start setting up. And as I do, fans at home, very quick reminder of what the standings are, right? XL 4 and 7. I was just talking a little bit about that magic number. 8 wins historically has been one of the check marks. So I want to ask you to vote in chat right now. Will XL make playoffs? Spam yes or no in chat, and I'll try check in after this next big objective fight.
So, I was doing a bit of research.
Oh, I got you. I bought some time for you.
Yeah, perfect. So, I was curious as to who the Anathema's chains went onto from Advienne, and he's actually put it on HiRit. I would have thought that he would use it on someone with a little bit more utility, but he is really trying to mitigate a lot of the poke that is primarily coming out from HiRit. So I find that quite fascinating. I might have to ask him after the game why he particularly chose HiRit. But in any case, for any support mains wondering, there you go. There's your question answered.
What does that mean in terms of the fight? And look at the minimap now. Baron is up, Elder in 20. Nukeduck is waiting to defend in base with Teleport, with Destiny. Vtheo's coming from the flank, and 4 members of Misfits starting to step forward. Dredgeline will find Razork. Death Sentence finds Advienne. Nukeduck joins the fray with the Destiny. Defensive flash from Advienne. The box will close off any further engage from XL. Vetheo gets the first of the fight as Kryze is going low. Won't go golden thanks to that stopwatch. Defensive flash from Nukeduck. A lot of damage coming out of Kryze, but not enough to turn the tides. Another kill secured by Misfits. Blown up inside the river. Markoon goes down. Vtheo's unstoppable, and Patrik, the last man standing. He's got himself that Hurricane, 4 completed items. You have to respect if you get into his range. While that's going on, Misfits in the mid lane.
And XL, they tried to start off the Baron and they were punished. Patrik, let's see if he can make the outplay.
Well, I see a lot of damage coming out. Trying to chuck it. Red, blue for now. Vander forced to flash defensively. 200 years activated, but 2 Nexus turrets down. Hello, this is Patrik. Misfits take down XL.
That final fight was XL trying to start off the Baron themselves. They were trying to get Misfits to come and fight them, but they didn't need to. They just played patiently. They had Nukeduck split off from the rest of the team. They leveraged their poke to the best of their ability, and they played patiently. They played exactly like they needed to. This was a really important game for both sides, and now Misfits, they get one step closer to securing a playoff spot.
Crucial, crucial 2-0 over XL. They bounce back from the 0-2 weekend from last weekend. And for XL, now that journey, that road to playoffs that they've never made gets so much harder. Misfits haven't been in playoffs since spring of 2020. They're looking like they are set for it this summer. But a very good game, a close game. XL had many opportunities, but they couldn't make the initiation stick. And that was my concern in draft. It wasn't enough initiation.
Yeah, I think they just needed more. You know what I mean? Like an Ornn in that game.
And
you
Sion in the top lane could have been so influential. You know? I'm not saying that for any reason whatsoever.
You're right. I agree with you. The Renekton pick is one of those ones where you're like, I kind of get why you blind picked it, but when you see all this poke coming out, you know, we suspected the Zoe in the draft. The fact that we suspected it, I feel like that they were also thinking about it. And if they just gone something like an Ornn, a Sion, a Malphite, anything that can just go, and then you have a Diana there with the Nautilus ultimate, then that engage becomes so much stronger. But I think that when you rely so much on Markoon and Advienne, it just wasn't quite enough.
No, it wasn't. If you're on Twitter, go to Key Player of the Game at LEC. HiRit, Vetheo, and Kobbe are your suggestions. An interesting game. It is, again, one of these moments where I think you have to praise the control that we had. Nevertheless, to talk with him on his first stage win, Law is standing by with Misfits, Vetheo.
For so long.
I mean, I think it's really different from playing like home or the office we play every day. And it feels really great because I always like watch people playing from here, and like winning my first game on stage is really special for me.
You often hear from players that you get a special buff when you play on stage. It's not the same energy. Could you feel something similar here?
I mean, I don't think it's like a buff. It's just, you know why you are here. And like you are here to compete, to win. And I think that's like good feeling to have.
I can imagine, especially after the 2 weeks that you had recently and the games you had last week. How was it coming back after last week's losses, and how did you talk about them with the team?
I mean, we had like really good half of the split, of course. And like last week was really hard, the Rogue game first. I think we should have won. I was like a bit sad, and after like we lost, we threw totally the game against Aphelios. It was really hard for me because like I have great expectation, and I know my team has great expectation. So it was, it's like just we need to still learn, to still keep tryharding every day, and that's what it shows us. And I'm really happy that we could like win today, and it's really important after last week. Yeah,
I hope it makes things better for you after today's win. But explain to me, because you've been so good during the first part of the split, what made it difficult since the beginning of second half? Is it team getting better? You guys being stuck somewhere, maybe? How is it going?
I don't think it's like we were really worse than first half. When you compare like our two Rogues game, I think we should have won both. Like we are leading and we are throwing both game on Nash. So I don't think we change. I just think like we're not good enough to win those games against the best teams, and like to really make sure we're one of the best teams in the EU. We still have a lot to prove, I think, and to learn still, but I think we have a bit of time before playoffs, and like that's all matters. Yeah,
and you're going to have an interesting schedule actually. Vitality, G2, Fnatic. At the beginning of the split, you mentioned that playoffs was the minimum for Misfits and for your ambitions, which I understand, but what is missing from you and maybe the team to be this top team you wish to be?
I think we lack a bit of discipline during games, for sure. I mean, even if like we are playing for now 7 months, I would say, together. It's still my first split. It's still HiRit's first year too. And so we need more discipline. And I think there's stuff that come with experience. But I just think we need to play better as a team, and it will work for us.
Yeah, it will come. And they're very loud backstage. I'm sorry. I'm so happy we get players in the studio again, actually. It's not the same energy. But Vetheo, thank you so much for the interview. I can still see your smile behind the mic, so that's good. And we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a couple minutes for a debrief of this game with Shox and her guests.
They are out there, waiting to be discovered. Some of them are big, and some of them are small. But that's the thing with ideas. They don't just come to you. To find them, you have to move. Kia, movement that inspires.
A lion!
Oh yes, the king of the jungle. Time for a quick Red Bull?
Red Bull? But you still won't be quicker than the lion!
I don't have to be quicker than the lion, just quicker than you.
Red Bull gives you wings.
Welcome back, everyone, to week 6 of the LEC Summer season, where Misfits have just taken down XL, and Cadril and Buffs are here with me to take us through their win and also the draft. As you can see behind me, this is a draft order in which they were actually picked, not as we ended up seeing them on the Rift. And yeah, the Buffs, what were your main takeaways of both drafts and the plans that both teams had?
Right. Well, we have Misfits over here. They kind of do a little undercovered early draft. You don't really know what they're going for, right? And then I think the biggest thing to take away from this is XL pulls the trigger on pick 4, Renekton blind pick.
And what do you think?
And there's some people out there that don't like Renekton blind pick. They hate it, actually. And yeah, it showed here, you know, they pick Renekton, full on poke style coming in from Misfits to counter it. And well, we know what happened.
Yeah, completely right. I completely agree. The blind pick Renekton was kind of poor when especially when you're last picking a TF and you're countering yourself in the Zoe that always has the push. I think the biggest aim of this draft from Misfits is pushing lanes. I think that's Felicitous. They play style really well. They have a Jayce top, a Zoe mid, and a Varus Thresh bot. So they have 3 pushing lanes, and Razork can just work well with that. You saw the early game. He got off to a great start, and that's just how Misfits wanted to play the early stages through this draft.
Indeed. As we take a look at this first replay, I'd like to talk a bit more also about what we brought up in Ready Check being good deaths or bad deaths, because it starts off, let's just roll the replay and we'll see. It starts off with the engage coming out of XL first, K-Roll.
Yeah, Kobbe gets engaged upon, and I'm not sure how we actually got that lantern, because there was a pink on it, so massive props.
Yeah.
Maybe he zoomed in on it. There's a trick, you can zoom in quickly,
Vander
but then
trolling a little.
Vander stayed on the tower, but the thing is, they have push in mid, junglers coming, and they have TP on HiRit, so they can always match this play, but was this a good death?
He's doing a little bit of trolling there for sure. That's unbelievable. But it turns out to work out, right?
So it must have been planned.
Yeah, it must have been planned, a good death. Now, Thresh kind of holding himself under the tower is obviously not worth it, because you can't really clear the wave against 4 members, but like we just talked about, having pushing lanes, Vetheo's there on time, Kobbe's come back from base, HiRit's TP'd in, so XL, even though they think they have a numbers advantage on the dive initially, once the members of Misfits collapse, that's when they regret the fight and they have to back off, especially given the fact that you use Aphelios flash, you use all these spells like Ignite on Nautilus to actually kill Kobbe in the first place, so you don't have him for the follow-up fight.
Yeah.
They just look like 3 very, very juicy targets if you have a poke composition and you see them.
There's like very short range engage, and I think that was the problem that XL's comp had actually. You could see Markoon kind of flashing in and getting engages, but there wasn't much follow-up. I think we have a few dragons just kind of represent that if we could get the clips rolling, because I think what you tended to see was there was too many pressure points. XL are forced to engage, which leads to kind of miscommunication in the fights. The first time you see Advienne flash in, while the rest of XL don't really want to follow up, and then they just have to be forced to back off because they're short range, and then Misfits can chase them down with the long range that they have. And then when you look at the second fight, which we'll see shortly afterwards, the same kind of thing happens. Vetheo's pushing in mid, there's pressure points. XL are on a timer, it's TikTok, lose your inhib tower or lose the dragon, make a decision now. Markoon luckily makes a decision, because the longer they wait, the more they're getting poked down, the more they lose on the map. Markoon's engage is good, but there's no follow-up. You know, the Renekton is too low range, the flash hook just about connects, but Misfits can just kite it out.
Yeah, did it look to you as well, Boffs, that Misfits, even though the gold was relatively even for most of the game, that they looked like they had more of the game plan in their heads and they played the map more correctly?
Yeah, it's interesting looking at it again here. I'm gonna be real. I don't think XL played it even bad. They went for engage, but the problem was they just flashed away every time. And the moment they get the flash away, it's over. At the moment, they can't hard engage. When the moment XL can't hard engage anymore, it's just over, because they're gonna get poked down over and over again.
Yeah, definitely. And they have the flash, they have the lantern as well to kind of gap close that. And I think you saw a few fights that XL actually managed to get onto Misfits, and they got themselves a Baron instantly. The second that Patrik can walk up and hit, and the front line can land the CC, then XL can start to just mow them down, because there's no front line on Misfits. But if Misfits can have the control, play to range, then they should be able to control the fight and how it starts, which is the problem that XL had.
Yeah, as Boff said as well, if you have the hard engage, but you can't seem to kill anyone in that first one, then you're just thrown to the wolves because of all that poke.
Yeah, and then you have to ask yourselves in the draft, like we were talking about, you know, is Renekton blind pick kind of the thing you want when you have a Diana and Nautilus? Maybe a little bit more follow-up could have helped. Things like the Ornn, like Vedius said on the cast, even though it's a tank, could do a lot of work into a poke comp, you know, with this big beefy front line.
Could do indeed. Let's take a look at the final fight and how Misfits end up winning, because as we said, it was actually pretty close for most of the game, but this is then, the final Baron.
Yeah, it was, and it looked kind of good for XL in the first place. But watch Patrik, it's very hard for him to walk up and actually start to auto-attack. They use all of their CC onto Razork. If you just keep your eyes on Patrik on the left side, he really can't do anything. XL overcommit, and at this point, I want to say in a sense that they over-dived, but the problem was they didn't dive correctly. Markoon goes off towards the side, they layer CC onto one of the frontliners of Razork who has tenacity, and then they just get poked out more and more and more. And now you see it's just a 1v4. Patrik can't really do anything. The enemy, Misfits runs it down mid and ends the game. Patrik tries to buy time, but in essence, he can't really 1v3 that.
Correct me if I am wrong, but usually we would say, Boffs, that a poke comp is more difficult to execute than a full-on team fight comp. But obviously it all depends on how the game goes and which type of poke comp or team fight comp you have, right?
Yes. I mean, you take a look at the Misfits here, they probably hit 20% of their skill shots, but they get away with it, right? So it's not that they played super well and they hit all their... No, they missed a lot of skill shots, but it doesn't matter, because unless XL gets the engage, and if they don't do that, they can't do anything.
So it's not about hitting all of your skill shots in a
It's
poke
about throwing
competition.
many.
It's
It's about throwing many. Miss every shot you don't take.
miss every shot you don't take. As a serious wrap-up, though, it is about knowing what you want to do with it, right? And knowing that if you miss a couple here and there, as long as you get the ones that you need on the central top targets, then you know you're going to win.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think you're completely right in saying that the Pokemon's harder to execute, because I think that you get sucked into these fights to the point where it's like, oh, we can fight this. And then I think if you bite off a little bit more than you can chew, then XL can engage on you all of a sudden. So making sure you play that range, you poke them out and respect their angles of engage, keeping the control so you're out of vision. I think the observers highlighted it perfectly in the game where Misfits were just hiding in the back ends of the fight. XL tried to get the setup, but they were getting poked down. So massive props to Misfits. XL needed a little bit more range to get onto them.
A little bit more again, unfortunately, for XL, but Misfits walk away with the win. And coming up next, Rogue look to keep their spot on top of the LEC as they face off against the struggling Schalke 04.
Exciting.